talking about craft foam stuff today because I need to get some other stuff done. So this was going to be like a kind of shorter one. But this will be helpful. This is a lens that I made in the tint tutorial a little while back, just with the soda bottles and everything. And so I'm going to be making just like a quick lens, kind of that would work for your costume, or for me, I use these as like templates. That's what this is. It's just a craft foam template to kind of get an idea of how it looks before I commit to all the work that it takes to make a lens. And so, this is something I made out of craft foam. This is the third time I've shown it off today, but this is the armpit component of an Iron Man suit that I made a couple of years ago, and this is all craft foam. These are actually zip ties that I just glued in underneath the layers of craft foam, and then I used some like acrylic paint, just silver, like really dry brush acrylic paint to give it kind of like a worn metal, like flat black metal sort of texture. And then this is just a pen cap and some elastic into a larger pen, but it made a really awesome effect, and it was really flexible. I had full range of movement of my arm. But anyway, back to craft foam. There are a lot of different varieties of craft foam. I think reading the comments right now, the one I did a video of, Winter Boy, this is the armpit from that video, the Iron Man video I did. I have a video on my channel with the faceplate coming up and down. But getting back to this craft foam, there are a lot of different varieties, and you'll probably be more familiar with like a package of craft foam like this. This is what you can get at the craft store, a bunch of different colors. And then you can just buy black sheets. This is a thicker sheet of black craft foam, which you can get, which is good for, thicker pieces. Like this is actually a thicker piece of craft foam. So you can get thicker pieces, and you can get textured pieces too. This is a textured piece. I think I forgot about that in the last attempt at this stream. But yeah, you can get like cool textures too. So like you could have this on there, and it's kind of, you can see maybe that it's got like a very like mechanical detail to it. So that'd be really cool in some aspect. It's just a cool way to like add texture there. And then if you're using a lot of black craft foam, you can actually buy these rolls of just black craft foam. And these are good for, larger pieces or larger pieces of armor that you're making or something. And then these are the like standard foam armor material that people use. This is just a floor mat that you can get from like a hardware store or Walmart or something like that. And they usually come in a pack of like 4, and they're really great for cutting out armor pieces. It's really easy to cut out, and then you can form it and bend it really well and glue it together. It's really similar to the tutorial that I did creating this mask pattern. That's a lot similar to how you make armor pieces out of foam. So to kind of to gloss over what I've already streamed, I don't know how many people saw it from the last stream. Oh, that's funny. Really quick before I continue on in this stream, because Faison just mentioned. Oh, wait, no, that was L, sorry. L said I was going to be Batman with all that craft foam. Well, first of all, I've got Batman over here. You can see him over there. I sculpted that. I've got a video on my channel that you can watch of me sculpting that. And then, this is cool. You guys remember from the last streams making this 3D printer. He's still working. Oh, no, and he failed. Oops, it fell down. Well, it worked really well up to that point. That's what happens with 3D prints sometimes. They fail. That's kind of just a learning process with how you set it up. So I'll get him to stop working here. And then that one's done printing what it was printing. So now basically I can get both of these going printing more pieces. This is a spool holder. That's what I have up in there, and that's what keeps the filament spinning really nicely. It's even got a bearing that I took out of an old pair of rollerblades, just to keep everything really spinning nicely. Because any issue you have with a spool of filament, because you're printing for like a full day, and if there's any slight issue with it, it'll definitely get like tangled up and kind of ruin your print. Shout out to you guys who might have just tuned in. Thanks for viewing. Getting back to craft foam. That was me looking at my 3D printer. Also, okay, I have to look at this too, because I think it's really exciting. Has nothing to do with making stuff, but I had a praying mantis last summer lay an egg sac on my fence. I don't know if you can really see it. Here, I'll take it out. So this is a praying mantis egg sac, and I don't know if you can tell, but there are a bunch of little mantises that hatched today. So that's really exciting, I think. I think nature's neat. I think praying mantises are neat. So yeah, I just wanted to catch that on the stream so I can look at it later. But anyway, back to craft foam. All right. Yeah, it's funny because the mantis that laid the egg sac, I had been watching it ever since it was a tiny little baby mantis from like about a year ago. So I watched it grow up. I even watched it move over to my vine plant and live in the vine on my fence, and I watched it find a mate, and I watched it lay the eggs, and that's why it's so exciting to see them hatch. Basically, like that was back in August when it laid that egg sac, so it's been a long time. But yeah, so anyway, back to foam. I'm sure a lot of people don't care about bugs. But anyway, so yeah, I'll just go into this tutorial. I in the last attempt at this stream, I showed you how to kind of get a bent piece of foam, like kind of a sturdier bent piece of foam, and all you have to do is just glue them together and layer them together like that. It's a lot like how they they assemble bows, like with bow and arrow. They bend the wood and then they glue it together in that bent shape, and then once the glue is dry and hardened, it keeps that shape, and that's all I did to give it that curve. And it's strong, it's springy, you can kind of do a lot of stuff to it, but because of the glue, it always wants to come back to wherever it was held in that shape. So that's really good for something like this. The armpit up here got kind of mangled and destroyed. This is just a shelf liner inside that kind of keeps it, airy and not totally, covered on my armpit, because, obviously I was going to be sweating a lot from my armpit. So this got a little destroyed. You can see it's ripped apart and pieces are gone, but it didn't really matter. It just kind of needed to sit underneath the armor anyway. So yeah, that's what you can do to bend it. And then this is a type of craft foam you can get from like most craft stores, I think. I got this online because I just got a package of just black sheets. But this is adhesive backed craft foam, and so it's got paper backing, but then you can peel that away and it's just an adhesive on the back. And that's what I used for these Spider-Man lenses. It's just adhesive so it can be pulled up, and it's like a sticker essentially on the fabric, and that works really well. It would work well for a costume. I think this looks good enough to go to a convention or something if you had a visible eye, like what we're about to do here in a second. But what I use it for is just a template so that I can look at it and decide, does it look good? Like, what needs to change? Does it need to move? And then it's so much easier to just make another lens like this than to put all of your time into making your lenses and then realize, it doesn't look good. I don't like this thing. And, you can do that now. Do that now and save yourself the energy. And so for this one, I'm not really doing a specific design. Maybe I'll do like a more classic, like big eye, like thicker lens. So basically, I'm roughly tracing how much lens I have here. And keep in mind that you don't want this to be the eye hole. You don't want this to be the... Every time I say eye hole, I think of Rick and Morty. You don't want this to be the full opening, because then the lens will just like slot right through it. So you want overlap. You want the eye opening to be, a little smaller. That's very rough. But then you need the actual lens shape to be bigger. You need the outer lens shape to mask the edge of your plastic. And so that can be really the one of the most challenging things, especially on like the ASM2. If you look at that lens over there, it's so thin. You basically, on the ASM2, the tolerance is like that to that. And that is always how it kind of has to be at the inner eye here, because there's so much happening in here in such a small space that you basically always have to have kind of a tiny, thinner inner eye piece. But for this one, it's hard for me because I've done the ASM2 one so much. I basically like just almost drew the ASM2 one because I can like do that in my sleep. And also, it's hard because this lens shape is totally just traced from the ASM2 lens. So basically, I'm just kind of making an altered ASM2 lens anyway. I guess I could do the like the PS4 lens, but I'd have to like pull up some reference photos and stuff. I'll do that one. Once I start getting the moving lenses going, I've got that coming up pretty soon here. This is a step in that direction, making these lenses, believe it or not. Well, not these ones, but making lenses like these to get the template down. Because right now I'm in the process of getting ready to photogram this face shell, get it into the computer so that I can start using those two printers to start printing the MCU shell, as well as both ASM1 and ASM2 shells. Because as soon as those are ready, if you have a printer or someone who can get it printed for you, I'll have that available, and you'll be able to get the STL file and print them yourselves. So that's coming up like soon. I want that to be available because I just have so many people coming and asking how to get a shell that I want to facilitate that for everyone. But the reason this is a shorter stream is, once again, facials are still my priority. Welcome to my thought process over the last several months, and it just is like, I really want to get this stuff done, but I need to get the face shells done, and I kind of get locked up in my free time on what to do. Okay, so that's a pretty, I basically just sketched out ASM2. Yeah, and that's kind of partly because I can't like go much larger. I guess I could do like more of like a higher up curve like this. That'd be kind of different. All right, that's pretty cool. Braden, go on to Shapeways. Braden just said nobody makes the Sam Raimi lenses. You can go on to Shapeways. They're expensive on Shapeways, and I don't know if they sell the lenses by themselves, but you can get those. And also, you could do the Sam Raimi. I used to do the Sam Raimi lenses with this craft foam technique, and you can kind of like paint it and get that gunmetal effect. Really good with this. So this technique is definitely something to think about. So here I am. You can see that it's a really like rough sketch. What I like to do when I sketch is just to kind of like get an idea of the shape. I can like discern the shape out of that sketch. Like, and if it's not, I kind of like fill in color until I get the kind of curve I like. And then I can kind of just judge what I like out of that mess of a sketch. And once again, the sharper the X-Acto knife, the better. And like the more of a fluid motion you're making, you're kind of like a painter just kind of moving his paintbrush. You need to make an arc. If you stop and, start and stop and start, you're making kind of a jaggedy shape. Whereas kind of keeping it moving and kind of like driving a car. It's like you're driving a motorcycle more so because it's on a single track like this. So you just got to direct it. And I had to stop there. I mean, sometimes you do have to stop and like readjust. Yeah, exactly. And, oops, I didn't cut those corner pieces well enough. That was a little sloppy. That ended up tearing, and like if this was something I cared about, I would start over because of that. Because I just ended up ripping a big chunk out of the corner there, if you can see it. And I mean that's what shows up. I mean that's like the thing people look at in pictures. It's not that big of a deal. And also since I'm just doing like a test, sort of like demonstration test lens, it's not that big of an issue. But if I cared, I'd just start over because it'd be so easy. Just trace this onto your paper. You'd want to do that anyway to get the other lens. And when in doubt, go outside. Cut it too big. Never cut it too small. When in doubt, go outside. Because then, you can trim down. You can always trim down. But unless you're in the world of the computer and 3D printing, you can never add back. And that's why I like 3D printing and the world of the computer. Because you can undo your last move. You can add things. You can totally mirror all of your work on one thing into another thing. Like, it's just so awesome. I'm really coming around to that these last few months. And I'm ready to start printing some cool stuff. All right, so that's basically, the test lens or frame that I kind of sketched together there. Before you peel it, there are kind of points of no return. Learn to recognize the points of no return. Like peeling it, that's a point of no return. Like once it's sticky on one side, that complicates things because you know what I need to do here? I need to trace it like this because I need a flip. I need a reflection of it. If I were to trace it like this, then I'd have two of the same lens when it's all flipped over. So I need it this so that when it's flipped over, it's symmetrical. I don't really care. I'm not doing two here because I don't even have two of these lenses. So here I'm gonna go past the point of no return. All right, and so super easy. If you're doing this, I don't remember what I did when I did this for a Halloween costume one year. I had the last minute lens to make, and I did it for a Halloween. Yeah, I did it for like a Halloween thing. So if I were doing this, I guess I could start by placing the lens in the frame. Just get everything really lined up. Probably the most important thing, in my experience, like I said, this is the thinnest, tightest tolerance area. Well, then that's where you want to start. Oh, I've got some stuff sticking off the edge. I don't want that to stick out at the end. Oh, I always cut stuff over the garbage. Now I feel bad because this is contributing to the microplastic contaminating the ocean issue. I read an article about that recently, and it's like, yeah, cutting polyester fabrics is one of the worst things. It just creates basically plastic dust that goes straight into the ocean. Woohoo! It's a lot of what I do. Boom. Okay. So now, keep in mind, this thing was done as a flat lens, but now it's having to conform around a three-dimensional shape. So as I kind of work in both of these directions here, it's going to do weird stuff at the end. I can guarantee it. So I have to be wary of that. But that's the advantage of foam, is that it can do that. It can stretch into kind of like curved shapes and still work. It's pretty, I accidentally went pretty low there. I think I kind of need to angle the lens a little differently. So I'm peeling all the way back here and then twisting a little bit. Okay, so I just really lightly kind of went around and made sure, so it's all made contact now. And now I could go on and put it on like that. And then just because it's adhesive backed craft foam, make sure it's stuck. And so I guess, say if you wanted this to be your final result, all I'll say is that you wouldn't have a removable lens, or it wouldn't be removable, but you probably, if you're doing this, you probably don't even have a face shell. I mean, you could have a mask with just this, just your soda bottle lens, your craft store mesh, or your fabric store bridal mesh, and then your craft store black craft foam here. Still has some paper on the edges from when it was cut, but and yeah, you make that's like a pretty good result that I just got for probably like what, $1 of materials. Well, like in total, I guess the soda bottle costs $1 itself, so it'd probably be like $4 or $5 in materials. There's the $5 Spider-Man lens. Yeah, he does. He looks like he has different expressions. Just peel that off so it's not so distracting. But yeah, and then if you if you wanted to actually have a costume, like this was your lens for your costume, you might want to put a coat of Plastidip on the outside of the lens, on the craft foam frame. I did a tutorial on Plastidip a few streams back. You could just bring up that tutorial. It's kind of the same philosophy. Just get black Plastidip and spray it and give it a really even coating, and that'll strengthen it and stuff. You can also coat it with white glue. White glue will go on, and it'll look white at first, but it usually dries clear because it's basically just kind of like a air drying plastic. Plastidip, yeah, that's what that is. Plastidip is good. The thing about Plastidip, here, let me grab my Batman mask because it's cool. Thing about Plastidip, because that's how I finished this off. So this is Plastidip. Whoops, take that trash can. This is a Plastidip finish, but it's not like shiny. I guess it's shinier than the craft foam is. Yeah, so that's what the surface would look like. That's what Plastidip does for you. And the good thing about Plastidip is it's this like rubber, tough, very like Batman-esque, like rubberized paint, like what you guys are saying in the comments. And yeah, so I did that on a face shell tutorial. I did that on this Batman cowl that I sculpted. And yeah, that's Plastidip is something to always keep in mind because it makes things kind of jump to a high level of quality for a low price in a lot of situations. If you're going for like a flat, black, cool matte look, and it's pretty, It's pretty, versatile. It's strong stuff, especially on foam. But I also, I didn't put Plastidip on this because there are circumstances where it can just get worn down and wear off. Also, a quick note about these pieces. I just covered them with silver duct tape. That's just silver duct tape that I kind of painted with black spray paint. I dusted with black spray paint. And actually, this is all real weathering. This is the weathering of the spray paint on the duct tape. It looks like mechanical weathering or like, Bubba Fett weathering, but this is all real. Basically, it was just silver spray paint that had black, or silver duct tape that had black paint dusted on it. But all that weathering, it's really cool what it did. Yeah, I really liked how that happened as I wore the suit more and more. It kind of gave it a more like cool. That's funny. Yeah, you saw the milk bottle that my Batman cowl rests on. It's funny because I used that milk bottle to paint to Plastidip the cowl, and then I didn't have any stand for it because I have mannequin heads for everything else, but that cowl is actually just solid urethane plastic. It's not rubber or anything. So my mannequin head doesn't fit up inside of it. So I used that milk bottle to paint it, and once I was done painting it, I was like, oh, that looks like a really nice base. It's just the top isn't painted because it was inside. It's pretty funny. Oh yeah, there are some other things I wanted to cover with craft foam really fast. So say you're making kind of a rounded shape, because this is something I noticed this weekend when Spider-Man. If you're watching Spider-Man, you should probably pick another name or a more specific name, because then if other people come in and call themselves Spider-Man, it'll start to get confusing. But anyway, he's making a face shell. It looks like, pretty much just from craft foam. And so there's some things you can do to kind of get a curved shape into a piece that you're working on. And to do that, I'm going to cut this into some squares for the sake of demonstration. Thanks for tuning in. If you've just tuned in recently, I know a lot of you guys are being really good and patient about wanting to see the moving lens tutorial, and I'll get there. I'm getting there. Like I'm thinking like early May, the beginning of May. I wanna actually tackle that tutorial and actually have the my next version finished. To kind of tell you what's taking so long, I was working on this mask, and I still want to finish it. But I was working on this mask you can see here with this awesome material. I got this from El Fett because he does those awesome Deadpool costumes, and as soon as he showed me that material, I was like, oh man, can I have some of that for MCU? He's like, yeah. And so we worked out a trade and stuff, and unfortunately I've been working with it, and this stuff's only 2-way stretch. It's not 4-way, so it stretches really well in that direction, but not quite as well in this direction. And that I'm kind of coming into a problem where my darts come together, but the materials come together at different angles, so the stretching isn't equal between the two pieces coming together. So basically, like when this gets put on, there's just no way. I've actually been hand sewing this. That's why it looks a little rough. But when this gets put on, there's just no way that seam isn't going to kind of. I mean, it might work. I still want to finish it. It's pretty labor intensive getting this thing ready, but I'm kind of worried that even my tiny little mannequin head won't fit inside of it with a face shell. But I'll still finish that at some point. If you're not familiar with me, I'm the king of starting projects, but not of finishing them. Dragon Monarch asked if if I would suggest using self-made lenses, like the lenses I basically just made here, it sounds like he has a face shell, but he doesn't have lenses. You could try that. I mean, there would be basically no harm in trying. What you could do is you could basically make a lens like this. One thing about this, though, is like if I were doing this as a finished product, you could layer it. What you could do is you could have cut out another layer of this frame, and you could put another one on top, like another layer of this, and that would make it a little thicker, but it would keep the shape of, or you could do it on the inside of the frame too, like a thinner strip that comes on the inside but keeps like this curve, because when you unstick this, it might be pretty good about keeping its shape. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, honestly, isn't that pretty practical? I mean, you could just do that. If it's, I mean, the biggest problem is the adhesive would kind of wear down. You might need to like, I don't know. You could do magnets. I mean, you would just probably want to connect the magnets to the plastic of the lenses, and then, yeah, you'd probably be fine. So I'd give it a shot. If you've got the magnets and stuff, you can get magnets at most hardware store, like rare earth magnets. But yeah, okay. So I want to show you guys a little bit of a trick for getting like kind of a dome curved shape. Like say I'm doing something like the forehead on this Spider-Man face shell. So I want to get that dome curve shape, and I've got 2 layers of foam because that's what I'm going to use here to. I'm going to layer laminate. Is it laminate? I'm trying to think of what the actual word is. I'm like the worst teacher in the world. I'm basically don't think of me as a teacher. Just kind of like think of it more as just like kind of watching me while I do stuff. Because a lot of times I don't know the names for things. Like I know how to use it, I just don't know the name of it. Which is kind of a component of self-teaching, just bad fundamentals, I guess. But anyway, layering pieces together to get, that stronger, this is like a more resilient, thicker. Unfortunately, you need like a hard thing under a face shell because spandex is rough. I mean, spandex is just so tight, and like if you have something like this, I mean, you could work really hard to craft this shape, but the spandex will defeat that. I mean, the spandex will just bully it down to, push it down to wherever the spandex wants to go. Probably just flatten it down against whatever your model is. So you'd probably have some issues with that. But you could do things like certain things like strengthen it with like paper mache or something like that. Yeah, I could go through that really quick because that's pretty simple. Degsy just asked about lining a face shell to make it a little more comfy. Really quick, getting back to this curve so that it's done. It's a lot like making a dart in like fabric. You want it to kind of come to as much of a minimum angle as possible. Kind of made butts. Those are butts. But anyway, basically it's like you glue them together to get that curved shape. So you can see there that it kind of like fabric. If this were spandex, kind of the force of being worn is what pushes it, and it stretches and becomes the curved shape. But because the foam doesn't really have that, it just kind of wants to make this kind of like really harsh, sharp edge. And so what you can do for that actually is take some tape, and this is how you initially put it together. And there are, if you're interested in making like armor and things out of foam, there are some really excellent tutorials out there from some like masters, like on the Tested channel. I know there's a really excellent tutorial just on making like a magneto foam helmet, and they go through all of the techniques really well. So basically I'm doing, and this is really rough. I didn't even make like a template, or this is not even an armor tutorial like in the slightest. This is just like a this thing tutorial. So basically, this is going to be the outside. This is the outside of that curve. But when I glue it together, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to apply my glue like this, and then push it in and get it to cure like this. And that might cause a couple problems right now. It looks like it might bunch together a little bit. Here, I'll push it back out. So this is, once again, this is just super glue. And I mean, you don't want to get this on your fingers or on tabletops or carpet or anything, because it's really unforgiving there. But in situations like this, it's just so fast and easy. And so I'm just going to kind of run along the edge in here and just get it a little soaked. Because if there's any excess, I'll just end up wiping it away right away as soon as I do this. I'll do that with a little scrap piece of craft foam. Okay, I don't want it to flick too badly, but here we go. Okay, so there's some glue dripping out a little bit. Want to kind of like shape the seam so that it has a kind of nicer shape. It's a little rough down here at the bottom, but I think that's okay. Okay, so those pieces are basically glued together, a little sticky still, but now I can take that tape off, because craft foam just reacts with super glue so fast. And so now that's kind of, forced it to make a little smoother of a shape. Not super smooth. If anything, it's probably looks a little bit better on that side. But what you can also do now is kind of do the same thing to the other side, but do it backwards. That's, I cut that other one like that. And so that well, I guess maybe that's too tight of a curve. Basically, just don't perfectly line up your seams. It might be kind of hard to do that, but you don't just, probably like offsetting in this situation, just offsetting it a little bit. You just don't perfectly line them up, and then that also kind of contributes to the like curving shape of what the foam does. And then beyond that, you probably want to do this first, but you could get a heat gun and actually kind of work the shape of the curve. And I mean, even without a heat gun, you can just kind of stretch it and push it, and kind of like if you think about how a blacksmith tempers metal, as you like kind of stretch it and push it and knead it out a little bit, it works that curved shape into it. It'll look lumpy at first, and it always looks a little lumpy. And that's why, you know what? I'll be honest, I'm ready to leave it all behind. I just want to 3D print things. I want to 3D print things and then cast them and mold them and cast them, and then do it that way, because it's just the best. I love it already. You can do anything. So yeah, that gives a kind of a sort of curved shape. It wouldn't be the nicest, like smooth shape ever, but that's why I do vacuum formed hard shells, because that's kind of the best way to get to that. It's too bad about your printer, Faison. Gilberto asked, which part of the suit are you working on currently? I'm working on the face shell and the moving lenses, Gilberto, because I know that that's what a lot of people want to, see and I want to see it. I've needed to do a second version of it. I only had made the first mask I made a year ago, and then I kind of just forgot about it. I kind of just, let it kind of, drop while I was focusing on ASM2 shells. And so I'm really ready. I'm ready as you guys to see that kind of come to fruition. But it's hard because it's like, it's a daunting task because there were some issues I ran into with the first moving lens shell that kind of, it required a lot more force to move all of the moving components than I was expecting. So that ultimately it's like the inside of a piano almost on the inside of that moving shell. It's just so high strung, like really tautly strung, all of the different components. And so I'm really excited to get into it and tackle it again. But it's also one of those things that it's so challenging. I don't know. It's daunting almost. So I've kind of not tackled it because of that. And also, I've needed the mask. You need the mask to be able to make the moving lenses. You need something to kind of show them off on. And all I've had so far is the pattern that I made a while ago that looks similar to the moving lenses one. But yeah, so that's cool. That's kind of that aspect of the craft foam portion here. I wish I had my heat gun out. I could show you kind of some of the heating elements of craft foam. What else? I'm probably forgetting something because I've used craft foam. That's part of why I picked craft foam as the kind of focus, is that, like, man, craft foam's just so accessible. It's cheap, and when you're young, that's so important. And so, like, craft foam and paper mache and plaster of Paris, all that stuff is just so valuable. Liquid latex is definitely something I should do, like a plaster and liquid latex tutorial, because that when you're kind of just getting into it, that's one of the things that really teaches you the fundamentals of, like, making molds and stuff. Faizan just asked, how would you reinforce craft foam for, let's say, vacuum forming? That's a good question. So he's asking, like, say you wanted to vacuum form this craft foam, how would you reinforce it? Basically, what I'll say there is you don't even need the craft foam. Unless the craft foam is, like, really, really the desired shape, then what you're going to have to do is you're probably going to have to mold it with, like, silicone and then cast really hard. Because the thing about vacuum forming is that you're getting your plastic up to, like, 400 degrees. And that really so the 400 degree plastic, even if it's like a thick, sturdy plastic that you're using as your base, the vacuum pressure combined with that 400 degree plastic, this foam would just, and anything that you put underneath it, I mean, you're basically just molding the foam with, like, plaster. Like, you could put plaster underneath it or something, but then you could kind of just peel the foam off and you'd have a plaster buck. Yeah, Matt, that's a good point. That's something that I forgot. I'm glad you reminded me, because the chest spiders are something that are really good to do craft foam to get it done. And S Green, hey, thanks for tuning in, S Green. You just missed. I just did a big spiel about moving lenses. So I almost thought you were trolling for a second. But no, you just tuned in. But I just talked about moving lenses for a little bit, but I'm going to get into that, like, early May, I'd say. You guys want to know how many times I've worked on the shape of a chest spider? This many. Okay, those are the top two legs. Oh, what does it do right here? I think it depends on which spider we're talking about. This is kind of like the ASM2. So didn't it kind of just have a big downward curve? And then kind of segments into this thing. I don't know what this thing is. It's like kind of just it's like the separation in leg segments, I guess. And I don't really need to draw a whole chest spider here. That's the thing about just drawing like that without kind of sketching it out, the shape and size first, is it might have all the details, but it's going to be super wonky. So there's a yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Because that will have a lot of cutting and stuff. And you know what? I mean, this is kind of yesterday's spider anyway. Why don't I modernize it here? So we got I think I like the size on the left a little bit better there. Right? Or is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. Oh, too far. I'll just cut it elsewhere. Or just not cut it. Yeah, good enough. Because I'll probably just trace those. So, yeah, I basically just use an X-Acto knife like I use pencil and paper. But the thing about an X-Acto knife is you have to think about what direction you're cutting and like where your cuts are going to kind of end up. Doing my flat cuts first, and then I'll just cut across and go through those cuts, and that'll give me some like nicer corners. I don't have to worry about kind of having little tab corners. Kind of the same thing there. Went a little too far in there. It's kind of munching up the paper, but I don't think that's affecting the cut on the foam very much. And so pretty much each one of these cuts, I start before the edge and I finish after. Do you see how I do that? Because what that means is, boom, it's just done. There you have it. I mean, that's the centerpiece. And so what you could do, especially with this one, is you could kind of layer it. Layer it with like, I know it has that kind of like Y detail. This is about the extent of my dealing with the chest spider so far. I designed one on the for 3D printing, and that was like 2 months ago. But I'll be designing another one because I've already learned so much about design since then. Okay, that piece got a little mangled, but I don't think it's too big of a deal for the purposes of demonstration. Yeah, this is definitely too skinny. Oh well. Boom. So, I mean, that kind of, gives you the dimension, and then it, yeah. S Green asked if I can make web shooters. Yeah, I do plan on tackling those. Those will be later down the line, probably like in June or July, because that'll be even probably after I do the suit and stuff too. But yeah, I think I am going to be doing kind of tackling the full suit with with a dye sub, because unfortunately, with my experience with that Deadpool fabric, I don't think I'll be able to be able to do a suit with that. So the first suit will probably be a dye sub suit, and I think honestly, dye sub is going to work really well for this suit because it's a really, you can tell what the raised details look like when you look at the suit from a distance in like set pics and in movie screenshots. When you look at the suit from a distance, you can see the raised details gleaming. You can see the web shining. You can see the raised brick shining. On this suit, none of that really happens. I mean, it looks flat red and it looks flat blue, and that's what dye sub is like really good at. You have obviously like the sunken in, webbing segments, but it's really not something that like once you get 20 feet away, it's almost impossible to even see the webs on the suit. So it's one of those things where it's like you have to decide what is worth breaking your back over, and hopefully not. You don't have to break your back, but I'm gonna use scissors on these legs. It'll be a little faster, but yeah. So that's kind of that's my plans for just the full suit. I'm probably going to do like a dye sub to start out with. And then also the good thing about a dye sub is once I've done my design, you guys can do it too. You can print it if you want. If you get the file from me. Yeah, okay. So this is kind of the difference of just cutting it out versus using an X-Acto knife. And on some things, I think I just kind of naturally decided to use scissors here, because sometimes you'll find with an X-Acto knife that if you're trying to cut too small and too precise stuff, you need a really sharp knife. Otherwise, you're just going to start mangling up all of the material, and like you won't be able to get nice, clean, trimmed lines. And sometimes it's something that scissors can do pretty well. I mean, they're good at making sharp, straight lines. It's just kind of corners. I feel like it's kind of corners where scissors can struggle. I could also be using like tweezers here, especially for like these cuts, because I kind of have to bully it. You see how I'm kind of bullying the leg to get out of the way for the scissors, which isn't a big deal because the foam can do that, but it's not ideal. All right. So those are two little legs. So I mean, if you had a suit you needed to have a spider on like later that night, this would be a way to do it. Or say it wasn't ready for a convention. That's another thing to know these kinds of techniques, because you might be getting a costume ready for a convention or something, and you're running short on time. It's always good to think of like, okay, well, I could always do the chest spider like this, and that would save me time. I could always, this is a passable enough a way to do that, and then I could still get out there, and it wouldn't be, you just pick what to spend your time on and what you can kind of breeze over. If I'd spent a little more time on that and used an actual template, it'd look a little nicer. But as you can see, I mean, I just have to do the other side now, and unfortunately, I neglected to trace it on the other side, so I'm probably not going to cut them out. S Green just asked. Well, sorry, I'm catching up on some of your comments. But yeah. Sorry, I'm reading all this stuff. But so yeah, sorry, painting the foam, kind of Plastidip. Plastidip is one of the best avenues for painting foam. But you just asked about creating custom shoe soles, and that gives me the idea to do that on a stream, because that's something I know how to do pretty well. That people might not know how to do. You can really use liquid latex. I mentioned liquid latex earlier, and it's not the best shoes you've ever worn in your life, and like they won't last forever, but no shoe will. And I've used liquid latex for my shoe soles for like the last like 4 or 5 suits I've done, and it works great. I mean, if you do enough layers of liquid latex, it really becomes like a solid, thick rubber, and it's durable. And so what I do is I make my shoe, I make my like shoe sole mold out of, say, a thicker piece of foam like this. I'll kind of trace the shoe sole mold. I'll make all the details. Like I'll just kind of like, well, you know what? I'll do you one better, and I'll just show you the shoe sole mold. Shoe sole mold. So this is my shoe sole mold. It's really old. You can see this is plaster, and I've used this thing like a million times probably. You can see this is the liquid latex rubber on the side here that the shoes end up made out of, and you can see, I mean, it's a durable rubber. I mean, each of the suits that I have with shoes like this, it's not like they wear out or like wear down. They get like dusty and dirty and stuff, but that's just from the nature of walking around. And then so basically I make a kind of a flat mold like this. And actually, if you notice on the shape of this, it's extra wide up here at the top, and that's because this is both shoe soles. I made it large enough so that the shoe sole can be flipped over, and this one just casts both shoes. Although, now that I look back on hindsight, I probably should have just done 2, because it's always really stressful, because it takes a long time to make a shoe sole, because with liquid latex, it needs to kind of air dry. And so if you just pile on a ton of liquid latex, it will eventually dry, but it will just stay wet at the core where it's not reaching any air, because the stuff on the top has already air dried and kind of created a seal. Air's not getting into it anymore. And then plaster is really good, because plaster actually sucks the moisture out of the latex. So plaster will just dry latex. And so that's one aspect that's good about plaster. But if you just put too much on, you create this kind of like dry latex on the bottom, dry latex on the top, big pocket of non-drying latex. And it'll eventually dry, but it just takes forever, because it no longer has a source to get rid of its moisture content. It's kind of like you have the latex in the jar again. So you have to do layers. Like you have to do just a thin layer that's able to dry on the top and dry from the plaster, and then just keep doing layer after layer after layer after layer, because the first layer will be kind of thin and kind of like a balloon, like a party balloon. But you do layer after layer after layer, and eventually like it gets flat, because after I start to do layers, I kind of flatten it like a cement. Like if you were making a sidewalk, I kind of try to flatten it out after every layer, because it'll flatten out but then sink into the like little details here. And so you do that and flatten it out and flatten it out and flatten it out, and eventually you kind of have this flat rubber that's the same thickness as the depth of the mold here. And so glad I could show you that. I mean, I'll this is kind of like my older technique. I have a lot of you guys, I see a lot of people talk about the Asics still. I'm pretty excited. I want to do a photogram of the Asics shoes and then get those into a 3D printable state, because then I could basically just sell the 3D printing file for those shoes and it wouldn't be hard to get them anymore, basically. Like, you just would have to have them 3D printed like anything else, like web shooters or anything like that. And then they could be resized to fit your feet perfectly. You would just need to, you can 3D print in like rubber materials, but it might not be as strong. So it might be one of those things where you print it and then make a mold and then cast it. But yeah, so that's pretty exciting to get that shoe going. So that's another element of 3D printing that I'm excited about. S Green asked, how would you make lenses that you could see out of with the foam, if it's possible? I don't really know what you mean, because this is essentially a lens that you can see out of with the foam. I don't know. Maybe you mean like, ooh, that's trippy. Maybe you mean like an actual foam lens, like full-on foam lens to be able to see out of it. If that's the case, you'd need to perforate it. You'd need to just poke a bunch of little holes. But the problem with foam is that unless you have like a hole punch, if you poke holes, the foam just tends to squeeze out of the way while you're poking the hole and then fill back in. So there'd be other materials that you'd probably want to do, because that's kind of the name of this game. I've been doing this all of making stuff, just making stuff, using the materials present in the world to make the things you want to make. That's the name of the game. And so the rule of that game is it's just, okay, what do you want to make? Okay, so you want to make a lens. So your question is, how would you make a lens foam, a lens from this foam? I wouldn't use this foam. I would use the plastic or like a plastic mesh, or, basically the foam. The foam is excellent for so many things, but the point I'm making is what you learn is that there's no material that's perfect for everything. There's no material that it's like, how can I get foam to work for this? How can I get foam to work for this? Sometimes that's how metal workers can be. They can be like, I'm just going to use metal for everything. I'm going to weld everything. I'm going to hammer everything. And honestly, there are so many materials out there that, metal is great, but it's not the end-all be-all. There are so many space-age materials that there's like such a toolbox of materials out there that, like, the sooner you start learning every different material and every different thing, the faster your stuff is just going to get better exponentially, because you'll just have this huge toolbox of like, okay, so I'm making Black Panther suit. Well, I already know how to make these sticky craft foam things, so maybe I could do something like that. And then you'll learn that, okay, I did the sticky craft foam things, and then I wore it out there, and they all peeled off and fell off. So I need to find something that stretches and is flexible. Oh, urethane rubber. So that's kind of the... sorry about that, Faison. And then Faison says that he cries in a third world country. I definitely don't know what the situation is like outside of my experience of being able to, in America, you can basically get any material you need whenever you need it. But I imagine that there are still a lot of resources because of the internet. Once you kind of have a name for the thing that you're looking for, like say you're looking for a mesh or like a bridal mesh. Okay, bridal mesh, got it. Wait, did he say bridal mesh? That's the mesh that's inside of the lens? Boom, go to Google, go search bridal mesh, and hopefully you'll find a company that will, ship you 2 or 3 yards of bridal mesh like this. And then even if you can't get to a fabric store, you can still get it online. That's something I didn't have quite as much when I was younger. I had to rely on people driving me to hardware stores and fabric stores and stuff, and that could be the worst. You really have to plan your trips. Oh, that's too bad, Faison. I go from eBay every now and then, but I imagine, honestly, I would look at like Chinese distributors. I honestly don't even know where you're at, so I don't know why you can't get from certain sellers. But like, look into Chinese distributors because they sell everything. China sells everything, and it's all way cheaper than you can get it from anywhere else. It's just you have to know specifically what you're looking for, not like a brand name. Like say if you're looking for Plastidip and you can't find it in your country, maybe there's a rubberized spray coating that is sold from some company that does ship to you. It's just that it's not Plastidip, but it's the same thing probably. Yeah, so it's kind of just it's a matter of and once again I don't have any experience with it outside of being in America where you can get your hands on everything, so I'm a little spoiled. But yeah, I would imagine it's a matter of just kind of finding who does sell the things you need and who in ships to your country. I don't. Random Spider Dude asked if I've ever done the comic style web shooters. No, I've never really done like prop web shooters because I didn't really get into making the Spider-Man stuff until the Sam Raimi movies, and he didn't have web shooters. He just shot them naturally out of his wrists, which makes so much sense. Although it doesn't make sense, but it facilitates the movie. It's just so nice. Just something that like, okay, now he shoots web. You don't even have to think about it. But anyway, so there was no web shooter in that one. And so the first, basically like kind of the first, full web shooter I did was the one from ASM1. And then I did one in ASM2. Both of those were pretty cool designs, the way they just kind of sat on the fabric. But no, I've never done kind of like the older classic design. That'd be pretty cool to do, though. Green asked if I've done the Raimi lenses. I did those a long time ago, like in high school and college. And if you know how to get to my Instagram, you can look back and see I did like the symbiote Raimi suit back on my Instagram history, and that was my attempt back in the day. But one big thing is this curve to the lens right here. That wasn't something I really like got down until a couple of years ago, and kind of pushed for, because this is actually pretty hard. And the soda bottle is such a cheap way to get to this because it's such a hard look to get this really nice curve look, because otherwise what you have is just a flat curve. The plastic just curves flat, kind of like how my cup is just kind of cylindrically curved, or like this jar, it's just flat. And that was a lot of how like just lenses have been in the Spider-Man world for a long time. Like there were no face shells. We basically just stretched urethane and mesh lenses over our masks, so that kept everything flush, but it still was just a cylindrical curve. It wasn't this nice dome curve, this spherical curve. And that is a lot more like the comics, and then also from profile like this. That's why I always kind of like line it up like that, because that's when it looks the best, is you actually get a little bit of that shape in there. But anyway, that's, when I made the Raimi lenses, I wasn't doing that yet. So they were always kind of flat. They were just flat bent acrylic. And that always bugged me. It's like, I know there's got to be a little bit of a spherical shape to it. But yeah. So I kind of covered some stuff on craft foam today. Had some technical issues early on. Demo those Civil War. Oh yeah, I had these on in the beginning of the stream, so you can kind of see how that looks compared to that new lens I just made. This is just copy paper. If you look, I kind of just skipped that step and I just cut a piece of copy paper and stuck it in there. Because I never, this is all just testing for me to get to the shape, and I'm pretty close to the shape here and the placement and everything. And that's why the next step for me, getting towards the moving lenses, I'm going to photogram this face shell, because this is the face shell that I've primed, and I'm planning on doing some I'm going to draw the lines, everything that I did on that last photogrammed face shell. If you don't know what photogrammetry is when you take a bunch of pictures of something and then a computer program takes those pictures and then assembles a 3D model based off of that. And so it's basically just like a super makeshift 3D scanning method. And so what that means is that, a lot of times when people like 3D model face shells or things like that, they're kind of just starting from nothing. They have reference pictures and stuff like that. When I do face shells, I sculpt everything. I have it by hand and clay, and so I can look at it from a lot of angles. And, that's how I get it to the point where, it looks like really good and professional. And so to get that into the computer program for 3D printing, I'm just going to scan this one that I put so much work into. And I've already done that on the ASM2 shell. And the good thing about doing that for this one is this is actually an ASM1 shell, if you are familiar with the different shells. And while looking at like reference photos, I've realized that the MCU shell or mask has a very similar shape. It has a little more rounded chin, but that's something I can do in the modeling program that I can adjust. Catching up on messages. Faizan, what do you mean? Go through messages? Did I miss a message from you? Because I do that. Anyone who's ever basically communicated with me in any way whatsoever can attest to the fact that I'm not that great at it. You asked, then you asked if the shell file is available. Not yet, but it will be on my Selfie, which will be on my website. Still pretty exciting. All that stuff's very, very young. Like my website's still only about 2 months old, and then my Selfie page is only about a month old. So yeah, it's been an exciting couple of weeks here, getting all this stuff raring to go. I know it can kind of be like, because it's like a TV show for you guys. You want to see like this epic arc of like, yes, more stuff every day. But unfortunately, it kind of has to take more of a slow roll, get things done when I can type thing. But I will still be getting to that moving lens tutorial soon. If for nothing else, just to clear up the comment section, so that it's not just always that comment coming up again every 15 minutes. Faizan, when I do these shell files, what I'll probably do is I'll actually charge a little bit for the shell file. I know that there are people out there that like give away files and stuff for free. And that's noble. That's really noble. But I think it's just not fair. It's not fair, for it to be like the standard. And I kind of see it on Thingiverse too. It's like, it's kind of like a standard that anyone who makes a 3D printable file should just, put it out there for free. And it definitely defies like old economic models. It's not like you're actually having to produce anything or ship anything out or anything like that. But at the same time, you still want to be, compensated for your time and effort and everything. And a lot of time and effort went into shaping the ASM1 and the ASM2 shells. So, I'm probably going to, charge a little bit for that when the time comes. So that's why I haven't like released anything or released any progress files or anything like that. But there's definitely there's also in Thingiverse you can donate to people who make things. Oh, another thing I thought is that I also this is by no means a promise, but I've considered, having my shells for sale for a while, like maybe like a year or a couple of months, and then maybe eventually either the price goes way down or it just goes for free. Like, you can, at that point, you can just download it and print it if you don't have money. So you just have to kind of be patient, because then it's like, well, if you really want it before then, you can work and make a little bit of money and and pay me for my services. But then, at a certain point, if you really can't make whatever it is I'm charging, then I'll give it away for free. Maybe. I'm not promising anything. Oh yeah, Faison. Faison just asked. My Patreon says that if I pledge, I'll be available for consultation on personal projects. By that, I basically mean like what I'm doing right now. I'll definitely help you in ways that I can. I mean, you could ask right now. But yeah, that's something on my Patreon, and unfortunately, I've kind of been slightly neglectful of that Patreon page because it's difficult, because it's not as mainstream as like Instagram and Facebook. So there are times when I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have totally forgotten about that Patreon page, and it's the most helpful, useful of all of them. So it really upsets me that I do, that I allow that to happen. But yeah, so and then Jared just asked if I'm going to do another print run anytime soon, and I actually am thinking of doing a print run relatively soon. I'm going to do because I'm doing the MCU. I need to get a dye sublimation version of the MCU going, and typically to do that, what I'll probably have to do is just get it printed on white fabric. Just get a couple test prints done on white fabric, and then go ahead and just do a full print order run of the MCU, ASM2, ASM1. It's unfortunate that it would have to kind of, I know some people have been waiting that long for it, but I should have that print design fairly soon, because I want to ramp up into that. I'll probably be signing off in a second here so I can get back to work on face shell work, because I'm still catching up on that, of course. And I need to get those shells out of the way so I can just kind of unimpeded work on this MCU, and also like the printable file versions. Faison, send me emails if you want to contact me, and this goes for anyone else watching. If you want to contact me, send me an email to madebymclean@gmail.com. And what I'll say, send me your question, but sometimes, and unfortunately it's like more than sometimes, people will send me messages and I'll look at them and I'll be like out of my house, or, I'll look at it on my phone and I'll think that I've responded to the message, but I haven't responded to the message. And so a lot of times that'll happen. And if that happens, then just keep, you can, it's helpful in that situation to just send like a reminder message like, hey, did you get that message about, blah, blah, blah. And, eventually I'll get back to your question or comment. Like a day or two, because at that point, it's pretty sure that I've probably forgotten, to respond to you, or have looked, either haven't seen the message or looked at the message and thought I responded to it but didn't. I mean, that's like the biggest problem, is that sometimes I look at messages, I think of a response, and then something, it's like I'm at the post office or something, and then it's my turn to go up to the post office, and that's it. I think that I've responded, but I never did. So that's always been a big problem I've had. But yeah, so that's the best way to get that. Matt asked how the shell progress is coming. Still kind of slowly. I had to get that. Well, I didn't have to, but I mean, that 3D printer shipped the other day, and I wanted to get that on the stream. So that's done. I finished that last night and got that out of the way. And so, yeah, I'm going to pick up and just keep working on them. I mean, slow and steady, as usual, the pace on those things. But yeah, I'm excited to work on all this stuff. Yeah, so My phone is dying a little bit here. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It was fun to hang out and talk about craft foam a little bit. And I'll catch you on Thursday, probably. Cool. See ya. Oh, yeah.